twisting. Muscles either side fight each other. Here I'm turning to the left, tightening muscles, stretching muscles the other side, and then the muscles the other side pull, but the ones that have tightened before don't want to give up. The spirit of contention. Tipping. These muscles have contracted to pull me down, and then I start these contracting without releasing the other ones too easily. So I have to separate the two sides. And if I want the muscles one side, the long side, to start contracting, then I have to really make it as long as possible so that it can kick back effectively and start shortening. So here I'm really reaching up and stretching these muscles, and then I tighten. We want to feel how the muscle actively contracts, but it can also actively extend. So here, this muscle is stretching, not simply because this one is tightening, but there is a sense that this is really working to stretch and extend. This is what we want to activate, because that's real spirit. It's the spirit really wakes up and intensifies, and that stretches the muscle, like reaching for something. If you really had to extend, stand on your tiptoes in order to reach the top shelf, you know, your eyes would swell, there'd be a certain excitement. That's what we want to feel here. So one side of me is contracting, drawing into a center, and the other side is actively reaching. So the idea, that spirit of contention, but now just working the stick. Remember how we used to do this? Just like pulling the stick with each hand. So we're trying to stretch it in the middle here between the hands. And you can get a bit of a twist going as well. Gentle, but definitely there. Like when we put the two hands on the wall or the ground and we try to get them moving against each other. Same thing here. The stick isn't really going to give. So what happens is that movement comes into my body in the middle of the spine. And then just push the hands towards each other. So just reverse it. And then just reversing it into a pull. And then just pushing again. Try and work that activity, that tension, this sort of dynamic tension, up into the skull. Pulling again. So habits of thought tend to arrange the cranial plates in a certain way. So when you get out of that, just relax the mind and activate the spirit, then you'll feel as though your head is becoming a little bit malleable. Pushing again. And then one more pulling. Now let's try just a bit with the belly. We want everything to move towards the center, the Dan Chen. So I'm contracting this area, pulling the belly in, pulling the lower diaphragm, the urogenital diaphragm, up, but it's also pulling the upper diaphragm, the breathing diaphragm, down. So everything is homing in on this point. The pulling down of the breathing diaphragm will make you breathe in. So as I pull the belly in, I suck in through this small aperture of my mouth. So feel the tension pulling down your diaphragm and then squeeze it out, blowing out through the small hole. Breathing in. So again, there's a fight going on. I'm really having to suck hard because this hole in my mouth is so small. Here I'm having to blow really hard. So here the belly's trying to contract to draw in, and it's as though the muscles in the back don't want to give up too easily. The heart, Qigong. The muscles are tightening to extend here, but there's a real sense of something oozing, something squeezing into a thin line actively. So the activity is not really in the muscles that are tightening, but in the muscles that are extending. This is what we want to feel. And my triceps are tightening, but my biceps are extending. Feel this sense of the dantian breathing from the ground. Just doing the reverse breathing again. So breathing in through the small hole and drawing everything into this center and using that to go down. And then when you breathe out, bring it up. So you're drawing air into the lungs, but you're also sucking energy up from the ground as you draw the belly in and breathe in. Just try and make sure that you're going down here. The down chair is getting closer to the ground. And then here you're coming up. And if you put your thumb in your navel, then you feel it being sucked in, especially as you go down. And then as you come up, it doesn't really want to release it. And then here it really sucks in. It's like the tentacle energy again. So if you just consider the tentacle of the octopus, it can extend and reach out, and it can also contract and come right in to the body. So each one of those actions has a different muscle system. So the tentacle contains longitudinal muscles along its length, which when contracted will suck it in. And it also has circumferential muscles, some muscles that go around it, which when they tighten will actually squeeze it into a longer tube. There's a sense that especially the hamstrings are like that. Not only can they contract longitudinally and bunch up, there's a sense that they can squeeze. There's like a hand going around them, and when it squeezes, they extend. There's this sense that when we push in Tai Chi, it's because of that extending energy rather than because I've contracted the muscles one side of a joint in order to straighten the limb. So when I push, it doesn't feel like it's coming from this, the tricep straightening the arm, but more like a flow of energy, a ripply flow of peristaltic energy that's just flowing down the inside of the arms. It's a different mind, it's a different activity, it's a different spirit. It's very active. Feel the 2 feet on the ground and let them contend. So they're working the ground a bit. They're not just sitting there quietly. There's a sense that they're trying to wriggle. The toes are trying to stretch and wriggle, and the feet are trying to twist, and they're pushing against each other, pulling against each other. There's a lot going on, and all of that activity is coming up into the sacrum and just helping the sacrum break up into as many little pieces as possible and become fluid. trying to make as big a circle as possible with the hand. So the arm is extending into this circle. So like a tentacle that's getting longer and longer, but also curling up at the same time. Feel the centrifugal and the centripetal. So the centrifugal just moving away from the center, outwards. It's really stretching outwards, really pulling at this shoulder. And then the centripetal is just what you have to establish opposite to that, just to maintain this equilibrium whilst you're moving. Something in me is really letting go and reaching out here. So that requires my spirit to spark and open up. At the same time that another part of me is holding on for dear life down here. We want to be with both. Because it's all in the balance, the equilibrium. Maybe a better term would be equipoise. Sense that you're poised for action all the time. Primed. So what in my heart opens up, my eyes swell, I'm reaching, but at the same time, something in me is really clinging to the ground and holding on here. Moving from leg to leg and just trying to activate the hamstrings. So here, the sense that these circumferential muscles, these round ring muscles, are tightening to help my hamstring really stretch out as long as it possibly can get. And then it's a simple matter to kick it in and start it contracting, because it will just elastically pull back anyway. I'm using the quad to straighten the leg, stretch the hamstring to its point of real elasticity, and then it will just spring back naturally. And then I just catch that spring back and just go with it. Okay, now let's just relax there and just turn. So this is one of the techniques we use, one of the ways of working, just to work hard at something to activate an aspect of spirit, and then just throw it away and just do something unrelated. Just watch how long it takes for that hamstring energy to creep back in, until eventually it just becomes the same exercise we were doing before, maybe a little quicker. So this sense that the emptying leg is extending into the ground and grabbing in order to draw me back round. maybe a little bit wider just to alter the height at which we settle. Just really open the arms, so very much elbows out, hands in. So this is another thing we have to try and get into, this sense that your elbows and your knees almost have like a life of their own. So my elbows are really trying to go out. It's not my shoulders opening in order to push my elbows out. The opening is coming from the movement of the elbows. And the opening across the sacrum is coming from the movement of the knees. And not just the sacrum, but these pockets here. Feel that when these places open, the sacrum here, the back heart, the front heart, the shoulders, it just throws you into a much more intense spirit. So what we call heightened awareness. And the poise, the balance, the equilibrium is just a lot more trembly. The openness is really the freedom in the equilibrium. The permeability of the membrane between the two things in equilibrium. There's a lot of migration across. There's a lot of energy coming out of my back, what we call the centrifugal, but also there's a lot of energy coming back in, otherwise I'd be bursting. And the same here. The sacrum is really distributing its energy down my two legs, but there's also something in the sacrum that's just holding on and pulling back in. So normally our attention is associated with fear. So that's like the chronic tension that we're trying to do away with. And then this new juicy equilibrium, which is really just your own spirit just looking after you, will start drawing in. That's more like ligament energy. So the ligaments are sort of a little bit stretchy and juicy, and they hold the bones together. So we're just trying to get rid of the bad. We're getting rid of the bad, fearful, chronic tension and letting this new tension come into the body. Remember when, the last days of Wimpole Street, John was trying to get me to develop strength because I was really weedy and skinny. And he just said, I want you to do your form so sunk and so tense that your whole body is shaking all the way through. So very unlike what we associate with Tai Chi, this idea of relaxation. And the two things have to be balanced. So, the relaxation, the swelling, expanding relaxation is always balanced by this real mean, tight control in a way. So the centrifugal and the centripetal, they're not only in the body, they're in the mind as well. Part of you is relaxing outwards, compassionately and lovingly. And another part of you is just tightening in and is just really dispassionate. And the word John used to use was mean, but it's not really. That thing, Castaneda used to say, didn't he, that, no pity. You say all pity is self-pity. All pity originates in self-pity. So it's like no self-pity. No feeling for self, really. Feel the heels. Heels are wanting to go out like the knees, and the toes are wanting to come in. So in a sense, it's really knees out and heels out, because the heels going out will bring the toes in. Feel that the heels are really sort of big. And just this real sense of like the wing that, or the feather. Remember John used to talk about the feathers? The feather that comes out of the heel, the side of the heel, and round like this. Like remember Mercury or Hermes, he had sort of wings on his heels, which enabled him to get around quickly. So instead of these wings going back like this, that's more the heel that hooks down. It's more like this. It's like the arms and the legs trying to come out and then reach forwards and in. So the sense of something coming out of your heels here. So you see these structures, the teacher tells you about these structures, and then you can sort of have a picture in your mind. But then the difficult step is actually making the imagination a reality. So just letting go. How do you let go and wake up in such a way that this thing that you can see in your mind becomes an energetic reality? It's no longer just a picture in your head. It's now in the energy of your body. That's just the way John worked all the time. He said to me, what holds you back is your inability to visualize. But I can see pictures quite clearly and quite well. But what I couldn't do was then translate them into the energy. And it just takes time and patience and practice and experimentation. You just got to try things out. And it's difficult because, especially when we're working on our own, you can't really get any feedback. When we're in Blakeney with John, it was all about us, me and Charles, giving him feedback. So when he worked on this wing, when he had this wing come out, we could feel it and we could respond to it. It's very difficult to find people with that sort of interest and sensitivity nowadays. And that willingness to work on it and commit themselves 100% to it. Everyone wants these balanced lives now. In other words, shitless lives with no spirit. The hamstrings again, but just going backwards and forwards. Just using the quad to really straighten this leg and just drive yourself down into the back leg. The straightening of the leg is doing these two things. One, it drives me into this leg. So there's a sense that I'm even more than 100% in this leg now, because not only is my own weight in it, this leg is even pushing me even more, like someone is pushing down on my shoulders a bit. And then I just allow these muscles here, which have stretched, to contract and pull me back. So the straightening of the leg drives me into the other leg and forces me to sink and get stronger. At the same time that the straightening of the leg is tightening the muscle at the back is tightening the agonist so that that can kick in easily and pull me back. So just use the front leg. So now I'm straightening the front leg and really pushing myself down into this leg. This muscle becomes stretched, and then I squeeze it. This is very difficult, so it will come and go. You'll catch glimpses. Hamstring is tightening. Now here, the leg straightens, this leg, because this muscle is tightening. But I want to feel it as though my hamstring is extending. My hamstring is getting longer, like it's actively getting longer. It's not just being stretched long by the muscle the other side. So I'm pushing the ground here because my hamstring is pushing the ground. It's extending. The energy is extending down the back of the leg. The extension is because of these peristaltic circumferential muscles around extending the hamstrings all the way down to the foot, and then I'm contracting. You can just think of it as the muscle structures in the back of the leg, the buttock, the hamstrings, the calf muscles. Imagine a tube of toothpaste that's really stiff, and you really have to squeeze it hard just to get it oozing out the hole. This is the feeling here. Something in you is squeezing like this to ooze the muscles in the back of the legs into their longest possible. And then I just tighten those muscles, pull them in. So here I'm extending the energy out, and then here I'm drawing it in. The tentacle gets longer, reaches out, catches something, and then pulls in. And the thing it catches is just the ground underneath the foot. The other foot forwards again. And now just really trying to get the back leg as well. So it straightens and it contracts. This one straightens and contracts. And remember, we're wanting it to sort of all originate around here. So the center of contraction is really the belly. So when the belly contracts, everything tends to contract. And when the back contracts, which is really an extension, everything tends to extend. So here, when I straighten here with the leg, it's also tending to do this. And then when I contract the hamstring, I pull in with the belly. And then when this one extends again, my back goes up into my back, and then my belly kicks in. And then the other side. And all the time, the difficulty is just keeping it in the legs. Now, there's another time when John took me aside and just said, look, he said, you really don't step long enough. You need to extend your steps when you do the form. And then it's like he had second thoughts. He thought to himself, and then he said, okay, just do a few postures of the form and let me see. So I just did a few postures. And then he said, no, he said, it's still more healthy for you to take wide steps rather than long steps. But there was this sense that there will come a time when it has to become more sort of aggressive, more spirited, and more like a fighting thing, where you're taking steps as long as possible, really opening up here to extend the foot as far forwards as possible. Because if you watch, like a lot of the Chinese forms, that they've got enormous steps. I don't know how they do it. They don't seem to be double weighted when they're stepping. They're not falling into the foot. And now just figure of eighting, like a cross between this tilting of the hips exercise and this sort of looping down the leg with the figure of eight. So this is what we're doing here. Trying to let the energy flow down the leg and into the ground. So you're not just standing on these strong legs and then getting all this energy in the upper body. Here, something in me has to let go so that the release allows something to come out and down. To get the legs to be soft and permeable, it's important to work them some of the time without the weight in them. So just like lying down and cycling with your feet stuck up in the air. The way I work on it with my students, I get them lying down on the ground. Then I pick their legs up and just have my hands on their feet. Often I'm kneeling down and just get them cycling, and I'm just resisting it. And then this just becomes really open. The sacrum is really rocking on the ground and getting a good massage. And you can just see that it's activated their spirit because their eyes swell, they look frightened and they hate it. It's weird to me. People hate spirit. 1, 2, like pivoting at the elbow. So blocking a high blow or blocking a low blow. 1, 2. And just let it turn the waist how it wants. So it will tend to turn towards the hand that's coming up. So this was the exercise which the figure of 8 exercise came from. And then just start with the heel coming off the ground. As I bring this arm up, I'm coming into this foot a little bit more. I'm turning this way, but I'm also bringing this heel off the ground. So I'm bringing the heel off the ground as my weight comes into the foot. So it's really activating the back of the leg, the calf muscles. Unifying upper and lower body. So the legs feel no different from the rest of the body, and splitting left and right. Left and right are doing opposite things. The bottom hand, the one that's going down, is with the hamstring of the back leg. So energetically, it's the bottom hand that's active. And then if you can, just keep both heels off the ground all the time. And then just a bit wider. And now just figure of 8. But like it's the same exercise, it's just a bit smoother as it goes over the top and under the bottom. Really extend this hand with the hamstring down into the foot. So it's not an activity balanced upon the legs. It's an activity that involves the legs. I'm getting into the ground with each round. So the bottom hand goes under the foot, the top hand comes just over the head. So the elbows going out pulls open my back heart, the knees going out pull open my sacrum, and my ears going out pull open the occiput at the back here. So legs, arms, eyes, the three sets of limbs. Feel it sort of throbbing from the ground. It throbs like this, but also like this, simply because you're alive. Feel the breathing. So that's got a certain rhythm. Almost hold the breath and just feel the heartbeat. Pump, pump. So there's that clock going on. Let's come back into the breathing. So just the breathing is with obviously the breathing of the lungs, but it's really just a rhythm, and you can hold your breath and still get this rhythm there. And then just really just settle and relax and just feel your whole body just throbbing very slowly. That's more the craniosacral rhythm, which is the one that we would like to get into, especially if we're interested in energy. The whole craniosacral system, so the cranium with the spine and the sacrum on the end of it, is pumping, it's swelling, and it's not really contracting, it's just something releases and lets some of the fluid out, so it just deflates a little bit. So it's more like a balloon, the balloon that's blowing up because something's pumping into it, and then the balloon that's deflating a little bit because some of the fluid is being let out. So this is very important because this is very much connected to the fascia. So the fascia breathes with the craniosacral rhythm. So when you get into this rhythm, you get into everything really, because the fascia is everywhere. the soft skeleton. Feel this when you're meditating as well. Once the mind gets, once it gets past the noisy stage and it's, beginning to be a bit quiet, then you feel these rhythms. Like that story that John Cage used to tell. He was interested in silence, and he heard that, I think it was one of the universities in America, they had this thing they called an anechoic chamber. It's just a room that's just waffled, so no sound at all. Everything gets absorbed, so no sound reflected back to you. So he said he just sat in there, sat quietly for like 45 minutes. And he said eventually he could hear these two sounds. One was like a low rumble, and the other one was like a fizzy hum. And when he came out and the technician said, "What was it like?" and he said, "I heard these two sounds." Yeah. And the technician just said, "Well, the rumbling is just the sound of your own blood circulating through your body. And that high-pitched fizz is just the sound of your nervous system." So that's when he realized there's no such thing as silence. If you're alive, there's always something to listen to. So it's the same here. If you're alive, there's all these rhythms going on. You're breathing, you're pumping, you're pulsing, you're communicating. You're exchanging energy all the time at lots of different frequencies. Again, your legs just really reluctant to straighten. Your feet like the ground. Your feet love that gentle talking. So there's a feeling that the ground is always soft. It's like wet sand. You put your feet on it, it would leave the imprint of your toes. So the toes can just sort of dig in a little. So the activity, the breathing, the pulsing in my body actually transforms the ground beneath me, turns it into something that's softer. And just feeling that spirit of contention. So you're awake enough to realize that there's a fight going on all the time. Not a fight to the death, a gentle, elastic contention. So without that, there's basically no energy.